Daniel's here. Correctivity for homeostasis, and thereby autonomy and sovereignty for European peoples, genus and species. There were a couple important oversights in my recent stream, or streams. And I'm finding that is just about invariably the case that when I leave out something fairly important, it's because I take it for granted. It's something so fundamental to this platform and something that I've said before. Many times. Nevertheless, it is important, or these ideas are important, especially when their turn of discussion comes up in our hermeneutic survey of matters to consider. So if you've got a listener there, welcome. We'll begin with the shorter, somewhat less complex issue. When criticizing Justine Brown for her complete disparagement of hippies in her interview with Ed Dutton, and my being eager to make it clear that free love, unquote, stuff was more like a Frankfurt School, Herbert Marcuse Freud imposition, at any rate, alien and at odds with the native motive of hippies, the motive of which was for white male being and being amidst his people. I neglected to mention what would be my agreement with her, that, of course, institutionalization of marriage and monogamy is a crucial component of socialization and its function. She had said that this commune that she was in anyway lacked the venerable institution, for example, of marriage, which had been upheld traditionally by the church. And she's not wrong about that. Where she was mistaken was to say, and this part I did point out, was to say that, or suggest that this was part and parcel of hippiedom, free love, and a lack of institution and respect for the institution of monogamy and marriage. And that's not true. The motive, as I've said, and I will assert this, the motive was for being, the most fundamental, let's say, levels of Maslow's hierarchy. Being, or what should be Maslow's, or what should be the hierarchy, motives. Being and being amidst one's people. again, to be amidst one's people, that has to be structured by a concept of unionization, social unionization of the group. But this being, their being for men, you're not going to have that in the sense that Heidegger means it, in the sense of authenticity, in a situation of free love where borders and boundaries are thrown open with this kind of liberalization via the Frankfurt School and their agenda against, of course, the European/white family as authoritarian, and the fatherhood at the head of a marriage, monogamous marriage. Herbert Marcuse was instrumental at that time, was for subverting that institution. And Fritz Perls, as you may have heard in the reading of his wiki page, would have been along with that too. More concerned with individual fulfillment than social rule structures. Of course, as indicated by his Gestalt prayer and the rest of his stuff. I've read Gestalt, and really, it's in retrospect, what a waste of time. Very little to be gotten from it. This stuff about living in the moment, well, obviously sometimes you have to be in the moment. You're a fighter pilot, no doubt about it, but for the most part, why the moment would always deserve such privilege doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But anyway, what I wanted to say is that she was in this community of where affectations were operating on the ineloquence of the hippies to the detriment of her family and undoubtedly other families of those hippies. And she was the bad thing that was being done is that, and this would be totally in service of our enemies, that she was associating those affectations, like Herbert Marcuse's free love and Fritz Perls' selfish individualism, Maslow's concept of self-actualization, highly individualistic concept of self-actualization. She was associating those things with hippies as representing hippies, what hippies were about, and therefore distracting from this radical fundamental motive that remains important. And also portraying that motive as if it was mutually exclusive to the institutionalization of monogamy and marriage, which it not only would not be, but that the institutionalization of marriage and monogamy, or at least very much the sacred choice for it, would be not just consonant, but even necessary to uphold this basic motive of the hippies for their being and their being amidst their people to make it work. But it seems to fall under the rubric of this red cape concept of mine, that hippiedom, their motive, were red caped by these things, whether it's free love or civil rights or even their over-the-board drug use, and people are attacking it, and with it, the underlying motive, or let's say pacifism, or peace, not want to go to Vietnam, and attacking with it the underlying idea that European peoples need so badly. That is the intrinsic valuation of our people, not just our women, but also our men having enough value not to be looked upon as surely expendable. Again, I want to stress that I'm not saying that men shouldn't be called upon to defend the boundaries and the borders of our people. Yes, they should. But that concept can be abused to where men are looked upon as this is something that they should do. They should go to war, whether the war is necessary or not, and they should be expendable. And the 2 world wars and Korea and Vietnam would have brought home a rightful skepticism of this convention, this custom and habit as it had been overdrawn. And it's really important to call attention to it offends me, especially when women, traditional women, disparage the hippies. Now, where are we? Now we have Barbara Spector. She says, block the user. Okay. So, it's important to make that clear. Of course our enemies are going to try to misrepresent this profound motive as somehow superficial and just shallow and unmanly. It's difficult enough a tradition to broach and to correct this humanizing of men, this capacity for men to be humanized. But you will notice, and again, these are things I take for granted, in all my talks for as long as I've been writing at university and with activists on behalf of the cause for European peoples, whether writing or podcasts, it's always been an important, I've always put it forth as a very important concept that we need to institutionalize from a secular standpoint, marriage and monogamy as a sacred option. It's not that you have to be married, and it's not that you have to do this, but the choice has to be respected and backed by institutional force as extremely important, crucial it is for our survival. That's why it would be looked upon, or that would be the criteria for invoking the term sacrament, that this is necessary for our survival as people, as a species, as a system. So while I can understand how Justine Brown would be disillusioned with hippies and her father's behavior, and well, maybe the behavior of just about everybody in the commune, she was mistaken to think that their essential motive was at odds with institutionalized monogamy. And more important than that even, she's mistaken to not get the importance of the underlying motive. And this is something that I got right from the start in my critique of her and Dutton's discussion. I mean, you're talking about 56,000 boys who died, and how many Vietnamese died as well in these harrowing jungle scenarios. And not just those who died, those who were maimed, psychologically destroyed, and so on. Maybe some of you have known the Vietnam veterans, and quite often they're pretty crazy. And I've said, usually when I talk about the importance of monogamy, I mention the fact that we can't let the scientific and popular armchair philosophers say that monogamy is not natural, it's not possible, because it is possible for people. It won't work out that way in many cases. It won't be possible for many. But it is possible. And the important thing as a societal position is to deny the scientific idea that it's not possible, that monogamy in marriage is unnatural and wholly impractical. With that faith in the institution restored, an option, first, for one thing, an option for the types who aren't going to be Casanovas or floozies. And are better suited for that, for being careful about who they choose and desirous to remain in a faithful union, is upheld, and they have something to confirm their reason to be loyal to their group, to be and to be into toe their own line. So obviously it's important in an individual sense, but here's an important thing. I had thought originally, I was thinking that the institution of monogamy and marriage itself needs to be looked upon as sacred, and then as things panned out, it's rather looking like it's the choice, the option for monogamy and the institution that has to be looked upon as sacred, and for it to be a kind of taboo to denounce it as something, it's some kind of joke or unnatural. But the choice, the reason why it's important to put it in terms of a choice, well, because first of all, it's just not going to work for everybody, and that there will probably be, it's not, perhaps it is true that marriage is has a eugenic effect, or maybe not, but whatever, there are probably, there's a rigor involved in through those who are sort of playing into the more rough and tumble of sex relations, and we could accommodate that to some extent, people who were not monogamous, provided they were limiting their relative promiscuity to our people within our group. And then we would perhaps, if not apply penalties to a certain extent so that they don't go too far, or if they do go too far, I don't know what would be penalization. I'm not exactly sure. But there would be added incentives, of course, or rewards for monogamy, marriage, and help with family formation. And having that option, the freedom, I maintain that without the choice for marriage, you don't have, your choices are, you almost don't have freedom and agency. You're just sort of, you're moving to the level of reaction to this law of the jungle situation. But with the choice, and with that agentive choice between for monogamy and marriage, you are removing one of the kind of self-righteous things that the Abrahamic religions would try to lord over us. For one thing, we have this option too. We have this sacred sacrament too. You are increasing the reason to remain loyal to our people and to not be cynical as people observe that there are people who are happily married and happy with monogamy, and that this is possible for them. It provides added incentive for loyalty and to fight in which way on behalf of our people, because we don't look upon our people as so degenerate and brutal. And again, that's not at odds with the motive for the basic motive for white male being and being amidst one people. On the contrary, it would be a vital part of that basic motive. A male is not going to have being in a situation of free love, or males in general are not going to have an authentic way of being, authentic and coherent way of being, where males from just anywhere are vying for the females of his species. This is a situation of acute anxiety and the opposite of an unfolding of his authentic emergent being. Now, this is connecting right to this idea of sacralization and the sacred is connecting right to, hi Elliot, it's connecting right to a second oversight, important oversight from the last show. Now, This worldview, the worldview of this platform, I have I maintain, roughly speaking, in agreement with Ram Hare, Oxford professor. I've had some talks with, that they're basically two components of our reality. People in interactive interaction and conversation and communication, and molecules. The rest of it, or the way that conversation divides things up, there are a limitless number of ways, just about. How we could, almost how we can make sense of these things. Now, the way I see fit to make sense of this social situation that we come into of no choice. We're born into it. We're thrown into it. Is to say, well, first of all, to observe that the social aspect is greatly downplayed among our European peoples. You can say probably true for evolution in the North, where we were confronted with nature more than other tribes, and the individualism that is evolved from our circumstances. And that isn't to say that this is necessarily wrong, certainly not in circumstances. But if we're to hold up as a people, as a species, to the onslaught against our group, which anti-racism is it's impugning our group boundaries as something which should not be, which are, if we have boundaries, this is called supremacist, entirely unfairly, but if we're to correct for that, we in fact need sensitization and more attunement to the fact that we are socially connected. And this is what social constructionism would do, would be calling attention to the fact and providing for awareness and social accountability, where we might not be aware that we are to some extent, indebted to the people that we're evolved with. Doesn't have to limit our individuality. As a matter of fact, Hooray and others show how it's in fact necessary for your individuality, both corporeal and autobiographical. Anyway, this is a slow road that I'm taking to the point that I want to make. But what I'm saying is that to begin with, along with Aristotle's idea that that we are social by nature, even if it's de-emphasized among Europeans, muted, that socialization requires group bounds to limitation. Otherwise, we are what would be socialization is leaking off, drifting off into the ether and into less and less a social thing and more an animal or lowest common denominator relation to other people of the world. We're not maintaining the more elevated homeostasis of our human nature, of our species, for this lack of boundaries. This would be this social conceptualization of our condition would be a radical difference from what has become European, something like the European tradition. There's been nationalism and so on. There's been group ideas, but we've become more and more identified with individualism, and particularly after World War II, of course. Well, you know the story. Most people talk. I've had the misfortune of being, caught under the auspices of a couple boomers, guest worker and Bowery, and then McDonald is sort of into this too now, that are just like doubling down on on the idea of how individualistic we are and how that's just the way we are, and how any sort of group idea is bad for this, that, and the other reason. And although the other people are, of course, more normal people are in that regard are noting that an overemphasis on individualism is they don't tend to go there. An overemphasis on individualism is a problem. They're not up to the bar of wanting to understand the proper understanding of social constructionism just yet. But that's where they would be heading with this criticism of the overemphasis on individualism. Anyway, so I'm still not getting to the point that I really wanted to make in this point. That's just the premise for. I was talking about what would be the postmodern, the white postmodern turn on uh, Maslow's hierarchy of motives to self-actualization, right? So Maslow starts off with uh, biological needs as fundamental, and I mock him by saying that, this is what food or any other basic biological need are you going to, as a child, are you going to have without your parents? And what your parents are going to do without relative cooperation from other people in the social sense around them, more or less. And what's that social group going to do in order to maintain itself if it doesn't have group boundaries, if it needs those boundaries? It might, maybe there were times in the far north where it was just, there was no threat from anything but nature. But if there is a threat, which is more than, the typical circumstance of human beings, that there are other people who might compete for your resources and to whatever, take your women away, what have you, then you'd obviously have to have boundaries and borders. So that's fundamental. That's the most fundamental, and you can put it in Heidegger's terms of Mitsein, there being amidst your people. And when he talks about Dasein, there being, he's talking about bringing you back from this Cartesian estrangement, from the theoretical estrangement that would take you away from this what obviously should be your central worldview. The centralization of praxis, our relative group interests. Now remember, I said that Heidegger is working with the three-way Aristotle perspective. Aristotle's perspective is the three elements: theoria, praxis, and poiesis. Praxis, the social world, central among them. Theoria, the world of cause and effect. Praxis, the social world requiring practical judgment, because there's not such perfect cause and effect, or such predictable cause and effect. People being agentive and having the capacity to learn and so on. And the reflexive effects of actions which can change course. And then poiesis, the other end, which is the arts, narrative, conceptualization. This is where now we're connecting. We're beginning to connect with what I want to talk about, which is willing suspension of disbelief and liberation from mere facticity. But in a moment. I'm proposing to, along with rendering the social world as most fundamental, I'm proposing in this postmodern turn on Maslow's hierarchy of motives, and it's in its individualistic perspective, correcting with the social to begin with. Overly individualistic. I'm not against individualism. Individualism is contingent upon the social world. I placed routine as a central component, and never. I basically have 4 components. Okay. Routine is a central component And I've explained that, so I won't elaborate on that. Sort of the in-between level of the hierarchy, if you want to still consider it a hierarchy. It's not gonna end up as a hierarchy necessarily. And then the sacrament that function on the same level, which is available to everybody. And that connects, again, in an important way. And this is where I was remiss last year. This is what I left out. That this connects with hermeneutics and willing suspension of disbelief and the liberation from mere facticity. Heideggerian concepts. The liberation of mere facticity is. I emphasize this because I want people to know that this comes from us, from our European people. When they react to the red caping of hermeneutics and the liberation from mere facticity as things that the left does, and does with wildly, that they're being fooled, they're being red caped, and they're chasing the red cape of a misrepresentation of ideas that are not only good ideas, they're crucial ideas. Okay, now I've maintained that that none of this is to stop people from pursuing self-actualization, whether it's self-actualization in Aristotle's traditional sense of realizing your inborn nature, or the more modern sense of peak experiences and making your mark on the world, and as might be appreciated by others. Well, actually, that would require the postmodern term, but in whatever, let's say the modern sense would be like achieving something new, being inventive. That would be a sort of a modernist expression of self-actualization. If you wanted to do that, that's fine. But it all requires a postmodern turn, that is to say, to be ensconced in our social delimitation for the sake of responsibility and human ecology, and our human ecology, our social capital, genetic capital, responsibility to it. So the whole thing would be ensconced in socialization, the whole enterprise of not necessarily a hierarchy of motives, but we're taking it into a circulating process. The hermeneutic process is circulating. A process to deal with what would otherwise be the Cartesian estrangement, to bring us back into reality and into what it is that we have to deal with. From, let's say, theoretical estrangement. And not only is it taking us into a circulating process of concerns, socialization, routine, sacred reverence, and occasionally fulfillment of one's potential, let's say. But it's a management of optimality, returning back to Aristotle's golden mean. and the necessity of that as biological creatures. And also recognition of our nature, mammals, so on, our social nature from the get-go. We're not reptiles who lay eggs and be done with it. You could take that a step further. We're mammals who are, by and large, K selectors, not R selectors. So again, the requirement of a willing suspension of disbelief that marriage monogamy is impossible. We are willing to believe that, for example, that is possible. But I wanted to get further into the very concept, and this is because it's a very important concept of willing suspension of disbelief. But that requires, there's in evidence a bit of agency there. And I've called attention to how the pragmatists earned their place by countering, the Cartesian inauthenticity as it remained in anxiety, riveted to the arbitrary throes of whatever empirical facts are thrown up against one in the moment and episode, that we as hermeneutic creatures are able to suspend disbelief enough in the relative importance of certain facts in a given moment or episode, that they can be reframed, that they don't necessarily determine how we might characterize the broader pattern and its coherence. This is a very important notion for not only for it's very important for the individual that you not be an incoherent mess, but also for the group to maintain its coherence. Coherence, it be said, I think that it seems Heidegger would go along with this, is the first task of any individual in the world, and so it would be for the first task for any group in the world, to make consistent sense. And you can't make consistent sense if you are subject to every arbitrary fact that comes along. You've got to be able to organize them and prioritize. And you've got to be able to rise above, of course, the episode if you want to be something more than an animal. Okay, so here Heidegger applies the term the liberation from mere facticity. That should just strike you right off the bat as something important. Hey, I need that. You do. And I'd neglected to mention this last time, to discuss this. Again, as with just about everything that I forget to mention, because it's so taken for granted by me as important, and I've discussed it so many times that I might forget to mention when the context comes up. But the liberation from mere facticity, the suspension of disbelief and the liberation from mere facticity, you can see how that would take us into semi-transcendence. I don't want to I don't want to be Cartesian in the sense of talking about a pure transcendence, where these things have connections to the empirical world, but also connections to patterns, historical patterns, these narratives that we might draw to make coherent sense of our autobiography and our group pattern. Now, okay, so the liberation from mere facticity. This is relying on a sense of hermeneutics, narrative and historical place, conceptual ability. And it is from our people, from Heidegger and before Heidegger, from Delphi, and then some Catholic monks, and then undoubtedly there'd be European forebears before that. But it's really important to emphasize that this is our idea. This is our European idea. It's been badly red-caped, and this is what, when this marketing program against the left, when they're saying, oh, these people just believe in narrative and they're not dealing with facts, they're not dealing with nature, they're not dealing with truth. It's all narrative. Well, these are abuses of our concept mostly by YKW design. And red-caped to, as I said, turn us off to some of the most important ideas that there are from and for our people. As I said, even when I originally talked to Kevin McDonald, I was talking about hermeneutics. I said hermeneutics is not anti-science, and it's not. He insisted that it was, because that's how it's been represented to him. Hermeneutics is not anti-science. The liberation from mere facticity is not anti-science. Can be, but it shouldn't be if it's to be true to its anti-Cartesian mandate. It's not anti-science, and it's in fact not anti-emergence either, which is the corporeal end of our system and our homeostasis. Whether it's, emergence, of course, occurs through the individual and through the genetics of our of our species. This is what people are calling attention to when they say that you started as an embryo and you are going to wind up by dint of your genetics, this kind of person with these kind of skills and whatnot. These kind of people create this kind of society. That's the kind of thing they're calling attention to. That's not wrong. It's not, and it's not at odds. It's not at odds with hermeneutics. It's not at odds with social constructionism. It's enhanced, in fact, by hermeneutics and social constructionism. It's kept in authentic maintenance, in homeostasis. It's not anti-science. It's not against emergentism, which is the other sort of anti-modernist, anti-Cartesian perspective, the sort of telos and teleology of our inborn genetic capacities. A telos is perhaps putting it a little more reductively than the perspective of emergentism would have it, as their intent on not being reductionist. Okay, fine. That undoubtedly connects to where they connect. That's partly where they reconnect to interaction, which is our primordial condition, and again where hermeneutics and the social come into play. Which affords, again, the liberation from mere facticity, which is all important. To your coherence and therefore your means for accountability and agency and warrant. These are very important concepts. Now, where did I want to go with this next? I just had an idea and it skipped my mind. The willing suspension of disbelief. Oh yeah, okay. So, particularly for European people, for European men, in the disordered circumstances of late modernity, you can see how this is important to be able to transcend what will become in that circumstance the atavistic evaluative criteria of the moment and episode. We, of course, are not evolved to be so primitive to function on that base level. We don't have the fast twitching muscle fibers and low time horizon that would you know, do something about things right there and then. We are sublimated and have a long time horizon. We are evolved more for permanent relationships. We're case selectors. Nevertheless, because our group bounds have been ruptured, as I said, uh, markedly by a weaponization of what was already destructive concept to group boundaries, that is to say, John Locke's disparagement of group classifications as non-empirical in his elevation of civic individual rights over that, weaponized by the YKW as, quote, civil rights and anti-racism. This is obviously going to have a disordering effect. You know, group boundaries aren't to be maintained. Patterns are disrupted. Our women are solicited from all angles. It's obviously going to create a lower common denominator. And it's going to provide some advantages to, or ostensible advantages, short-term advantages to females as they are pandered to, and therefore they might be prone to, many of them are going to be prone to maintain that liberalism as they have been sort of reduced to that more animal level where they will incite genetic competition and not really care all too much, at least in a puerile state, if their people survive as a kind, because they're going to just breed with the winner. Females will be more like that as they are not socialized. And socialization, again, requires the reestablishment of group boundaries. As they become socialized and they have children of our kind, of course they're going to be more loyal and more concerned. They see their sons are European and they don't want them pushed aside and taken advantage of and so on, and they don't want their daughters and so on. But it does require that socialization in those boundaries. And those boundaries are more and more more and more non-existent by design of our enemies, of course. Now, it's a big challenge for white guys that to deal with this disorder, especially those of us who are evolved to be more civilized, to be part of a civilization and to be a part of a society a more sublime society where some guys are not going to be doing the end zone dance and doing things that are going to be having cheerleaders jump up and down for their episodic performance, or maybe not even porn stars receiving the height of orgasm for their momentary performance. But they're more than good enough. Not only for a relationship, but for the society, for, say, their scientific abilities, their engineering abilities, but things that require the protection of a broad pattern and relationships to sustain. And so he needs to be able to suspend disbelief in his inferiority in comparison to the end zone dance or the porno star, and get to and see his value in connection with the broader pattern that is more characteristic, not only of his value, but of the value of the way of life that he creates, and the kind of relationships that he creates, and the marriage. If he's made a good choice in a wife, he doesn't want her messing around. He doesn't want to mess around. He wants to explore this life with her. Hi, Mirth Baron, you're up late. Or up early. Zeta says, provide women with another avenue to heroic nature and they'll be interested. But in these circles, women are limited to no pursuit than breeder. No, well, not here, Zetas. I don't, that's one of the very good things about this platform is that don't limit. That's, an option, and option that probably most women will take to be mothers, but someone can't and someone don't want to, and that's perfectly fine with us, as long as you're willing to respect our boundaries and our borders. If you don't, you're free to leave it too. So, but we're not trying to remove self-actualization from women. It's just what we're doing a bit different here is taking note that the reasons why men have been overrepresented in tops of the hierarchy, also reasons why men are the greater number of casualties at the bottom, and just trying to balance things off and make things more fair in gender relations. Well, look, Zed, I'm going to put in the. I don't know if I've said enough about willing suspension of disbelief and liberation from mere facticity, but I can always come back to it. And I'm going to put in the link now if anybody wants to join me. That is that you're perfectly willing to join, or perfectly welcome to join, I should say. Let me read the comments that have been going on here. Okay. Barbara Lerner Spector, unquote, said, "Why do you even bother, Daniel? No one listens to your rambling pseudo-intellectual." It's not pseudo-intellectual, and it's not rambling. Platt says, "Blessings, thank you." Judas Flychild, based Persian, Michelin. I says, "Shalom, shalom." Okay. Zero Infinity Live says, "Hello, everybody. How's everyone today?" Fine. Judas Flychild says, "Fuck all." Zero. I don't know why he doesn't like Zero. Zero Infinity says, "I lost my main channel that had a wrench here. Can you please make me a mod on my backup channel? Thank you." Maybe. Stephen St. James says, "Zero dude, I've never seen anyone other than you actual girls send love heart emojis to other dudes. Dude, come on, dude." Stephen St. James says, "We're not Grindr now, dude." Zero Infinity Live says, I know, relax, James, don't take it too seriously." Stephen St. James, I don't think Daniel's been into bumming. He likes girls with big noses and hairy, like Bigfoot. No, I don't like hairy women. Where did you get that from? She doesn't have to have a big nose. Yeah, I do like big noses on women. And some big noses can be ugly, too. It's not necessarily. Some of them can be cool looking. And, of course, I shouldn't say that. I should not exclude women who have small noses. They're obviously going to be beautiful, too. I do like the way dark hair contrasts with light skin, with very white skin. I think that's beautiful, and something that's of course going to be undervalued when blondes are overemphasized. I of course like blondes too, but it bothers me a little bit when. If people would think that I'm pursuing blondes per se, when in fact if anything I prefer brunettes, and so I think that I'm taking their precious blondes away from them. This is not what I'm aiming for. Mark Smith says, "Hello all." It sounds a bit rough, Dan. I don't know what sounds a bit rough. Danny, what do you mean by warrant? That means your kind of right to do something. Your what is your your solid, socially backed justification to do something. You are warranted. I just mean it very much in the way that warranted would be using it in that sense. I know that there's another sense of warrant. Like here's a warrant for your arrest, but there's a second meaning which is also very common, which is this is warranted, or like that. Zed says, "I'd love to talk with you." Zed says, "Provide women with another avenue to heroic nature and they'll be interested, but in these circles, women are limited to no pursuit other than breeder. I'm not quite seeing the distinction there. I don't see how heroic nature, or are you saying that the heroic nature and breeder are one and the same? They're going to become heroes by having children. I don't think, I don't agree with these people who say that, at all, with people who say that breeding is, and having children is our biggest problem. We have enough and will have enough children. The issue, provided we have borders and boundaries. Borders and boundaries are the issue. We're not going to outbreed, and shouldn't even consider trying. We're not going to breed the third world because we're going to have borders to, to keep them off our raft. Some women, I know, I look at them and I think, well, that'd be a shame. Or not just look at them. I know them as people. Good people, intelligent people, healthy people. Wouldn't it be a shame if she didn't have kids? But no, I see it as I don't look upon women as breeders. I think that, as in many cases, is that as you're reading on to me a couple things. You're reading the Andrew Anglin types and the manosphere types onto me, which is really not me. Now, perhaps perhaps why, hi Merle, I'll be with you in a second. Perhaps why you've gone after me is because you're seeing some of the old stuff from when I was younger, and I was angry with women in a general sense for my experience with a feminist older sister and a hostile mother, and also just a mean-spirited feminist laced society, and hadn't worked that stuff out yet. And I'll take some of, even though I have gotten past that, I'm not a misogynist, I retain some of that, the empathy for that outlook for a reason, because in order to help younger guys who are in the thick of it and suffering for their attack by feminists, and also for unreasonable expectations by these neo-trad women as well. What can be, that's a problem that's not normally addressed, but will be addressed in this more sophisticated postmodern platform, which doesn't just say women can't be right no matter what they do. They can't be trad. They can't be modernist. In fact, provides for a way for women to negotiate that happily and fairly. So let me just read through the rest of these comments before I bring Mirthbound on. I'm glad to see him there. Some doomer hour between the fox and the wolf. So it says some women should not be mothers, but I hope that those who love the idea will become mothers. Yes, I agree 100%. The range of beautiful women is astonishing. I agree with that too. Says, no, I'm saying having children is just the beginning of female heroism. The larger picture, what I'm speaking to, being essential regarding the vision of our peoples. Okay, no problem. I was not speaking to you, Dan. Okay. I was speaking generally to this movement. Oh, okay. Yeah, well, what's true. But the thing is that with these criticisms that you have, I would hope that you would recognize this platform as your answer, because it is. I've got here, a framework that you know fairly accommodates women and their concerns. Um, okay. Anyway, so let's let Mirth barrel in first of all. Hi, Mirth. Sorry to keep you waiting. Good to see you there.
Hello. No, that's okay. Don't worry.
I'm glad you're not mad at me.
No, not at all. Not at all.
I thought you. Well, I'm a little bit nervous that that Snork and Thorn at Moons, I think his name is, might be a little bit taken aback. Not that they should be, but I had to address certain things that they said in the stream that we were on. Not that most of it wasn't great, but there were a few things that were just like.
What was this the first time they came on your channel? You mean?
Yeah, well, the first and only time that Snork was there. I talked about it. It was just that he made this remark. Never mind. I don't want to belabor it.
Yeah, Snort's an interesting bloke.
He's really smart, but he's and I don't think that he would deny this. He's like coming to these issues pretty recently.
Yeah, people do awaken later in life, if I can use that slightly cheesy but true word expression.
Yeah. Well, some of the things I'm talking about may at first hearing sound almost overly complicated to people, but they're really not, and they're not more complicated than they have to be. People have to understand this stuff. They have to understand the difference between modernity, tradition, and post-modernity. Otherwise, they're going to get hoodwinked by people like Mencius Moldbug, who says, "Well, here's what tradition is. We want to go back to Carlyle and the King, and it's forget it. Do you trust Mencius Moldbug?"
He did quite an interesting interview with who's the Chinese American guy? Was it The Right Stuff? Borzoi, I think it was, and possibly Stryker. I think those two. That was quite interesting a while back. He did get called out a lot in the chat, it must be said. But you're correct. I see. You see, and that kind of like almost like neocon stuff, like, oh, we have to defend Western civilization and Christianity, and this type of thing. But not the ethnic group. No,
right.
That's not correct.
Well, he's a kosher guy, and this is an op, and it was Kumiko who put me onto that, because she's a heavy duty STEM person, a computer engineer, and she's watching this stuff keenly, and she knows that this dark enlightenment and neo-traditional stuff is an op, mainly targeting STEM people to misdirect them. First of all, because they're not in the humanities, so they're even less familiar with how these ideas are supposed to function. So it looks like, just a cheesy red-caped criticism of modernity. So you had Bowery calling me up on Skype and saying, stop criticizing modernity, because he thinks that I'm doing the same thing as, and my motives are the same as Mencius Moldbug, right? And Bauer's a computer guy too, so he's a STEM guy too, obviously. And where was I going with that? It's basically oh yeah. So the STEM people are not familiar with. Nobody is really. I can tell how these postmodern ideas are supposed to work, and also they're of course going to want to remain attached. They're going to be they're going to remain attached to modernity and double down on it because this is what they know. This is their bread and butter. Modernity has been good for technology and science and things like this. It just hasn't been good for helping to maintain our people groups. So they're gonna both find that stuff, the criticism of modernity offensive on the one hand, but on the other hand, they might be susceptible to some of the hokum that's being proposed as alternative, as traditional alternative. And so this is like, I mean, there was a place I wanted to go with that. Just a second.
We can come back to it if you remember. Did you see Gavin McInnes on Edward Dutton's show? Did you see that or hear about that?
That was the last show?
Yeah, it was yesterday for me. I just caught, I think, about half of it. And
doesn't it follow? Doesn't it follow that he would be, getting in with all these alt-light and this runoff from the alt-right people, this popular stuff, because he falls right into the framework. But anyway, was it fun to watch?
It was, and it was particularly fun to see a lot of the chat's reaction about him saying things like, it's boring to talk about race and this type of thing. And we need more Western families. I don't care what race you're from. We need to sort out the West. But then he's also he
doesn't care, eh?
He doesn't care. He's not like a completely open borders guy. He's not like completely lost, but he's playing quite a dangerous game because he was talking about the white elites who are promoting browning of America and this type of thing. Almost like close to like the truth, right? Like close to like what a lot of nationalists would be talking about.
I think these guys are definitely in the enemy camp. I mean, there's no question. Yeah. He was with what's his name from Canada? The
Baked Alaska?
No, like the Faith Goldie, not Faith Goldie. The Lauren Southern and these
Ezra Levant, yeah,
Ezra Levant camp.
You've mentioned them on stream, yeah.
Well, there you go.
He even said he was socially liberal and fiscally conservative.
Yeah, well, I mean, but this only increases my skepticism of Ed Dutton and his.
Well, Ed Dutton did a really strange thing. He said, does he move to Finland? And he married a Finnish woman. And Finnish, I don't think, went for open borders. I think, I hope not, I think it's basically Finnish. I think I'll have to check that. But he said a racism test is to check how many non-white people are at your wedding. What a bizarre sort of metric. Even liberals wouldn't use that metric, I don't think, many of them. So it was a really.
Who said this? Gavin or
Dutton? Dutton said that.
I
And
guess
he
he thinks
mentioned,
that, I guess that he thinks that he's just so objectively superior and above it all.
yeah, possibly. Yeah, and he was saying how liberals are racist because of their reaction to the really aversion in many ways to sort of black people and this type of thing. Um, I mean, it was a bit of a sort of grindhouse, really, but no, it was great to watch, to listen to.
Yeah, I mean, this just only adds to what was an increasing skepticism of Dutton. Mark Smith says, Daniel, are you upset that you have a J name? No, it's not a J name. If you talk to a Polish person, Sienkiewicz is in fact one of the most famous Polish names. It is the name of the most famous Polish author, Nobel Prize-winning laureate, Heinrich Sienkiewicz, who wrote Quo Vadis. I think a lot of people are familiar with the Hollywood movie Quo Vadis and his book Quo Vadis. So no, it's not. I think that some Jews can have this name, but mine isn't, and I'm not.
Well, they did take, Spencer commented, they did take a lot of our names, to be fair. It's, yeah.
Oh yeah, of course, definitely. I didn't know if this one poet that was commenting in the thread last time, what was his name? Bellman?
Oh, they're like the esoteric guy, yeah.
He was putting in these poems. Pretty good, and but I don't know if that's Jewish or not. I don't. It says it's not necessarily. I don't.
Hello, my fellow Satanovic's.
He refers to his children as American natives, yet they are 3/4 European. You mean
Yes.
Ezra? Is she talking about Ezra? Well, Zetas is Canadian too. I don't know why she won't join us.
He's referring to, McInnes.
Oh, McGinnis?
Yeah.
You know who else Jim Goad speaks fondly of Gavin McGinnis. He always go, Gavin, you're my man, Gavin. Whenever I think of him, I just always think of the episode where he's putting a dildo up his behind.
Oh God. Oh,
I don't know. I mean, the whole the Proud Boys, all this stupid stuff. No,
I don't know if they actually believe in free speech. They might do. I think he did say a few interesting things. And one was how that no one knew about them until Trump. I think they started sort of defending Trump and the Constitution and this type of thing, and then they got attacked by an Antifa and the regime, which is ridiculous, really. It shows how far gone American politics is, really. But
they're not. And they had a Puerto Rican leader, didn't they?
Yeah, probably. I don't know much about Puerto Rico. What are they? A mixture of Spaniards and whatever natives were there? Is that right?
I saw in my when I did National Geographic Genotype 3, they showed the general breakdown of Puerto Rico, and they have a big. Well, they're a combination of three. There's the Taino Indians were the natives, but they also of course, have Spanish and Black, and they're quite a bit Black. I think that they're 25 or 30% Black on average. Then a bigger majority Taino Indian than Spanish, but there are some just basically pure Spanish there, but they're a minority, and I guess most of them are a combination of the three. Some of them will be two of the three, but they are they're a rough crew when they're in the United States. They're the ones who are famous for destroying their neighborhoods. You go to a neighborhood, everything's burned down, nothing but this horrible graffiti everywhere, garbage everywhere. Typically, it's a Puerto Rican. It's Spanish Harlem. It's a Puerto Rican neighborhood. They destroyed Perth Amboy, Perth Amboy, New Jersey, where the Polish neighborhood where my mother's family comes from.
Gosh, it's horrible. I mean, it's not even like they can. I mean, it'd be one thing to have a community where like it's really well run and there's some nice like food businesses you can go to, and it's kind of like friendly or whatever. That'd be one thing. But to just have these people come over here and live like in slums. I mean, it's like who can support this? What you know?
But the thing is though, you have different sorts there, and I knew a Puerto Rican who was I roomed with him for a while, and the guy was brilliant. He could fix anything. He had that kind of that Taino gift, the same stuff that would come from Japan, even the kind of Asian capacity for that sort of mechanical logic. But it's still you're raising an important issue when you ask about them, because that's why this distinction of this name Hispanic can be very unhelpful, because you've got people who are basically American Indian, you got people who are basically Spanish, you got people who are basically black, and you've got all combinations of the three or two of the three. And the Puerto Ricans, because of their admixture, are going to be probably a lot more dangerous than, say, Mexicans, because Mexicans have a very small percentage of they're only about 5% African. I should be careful the way I'm talking.
This is the regime's platform, but I think you're right mostly. What's the history of Africans, and is it slavery in Central and South America? It must be, right?
Especially in Brazil, like 10 times as many slaves were taken to South America, Brazil in particular. Many more slaves were taken there than to North America. But of course, the Caribbean was populated, and what's really evil on the part of let's call them right wingers, because it is a really right wing thing, whether it's Christian or just their desire to exploit labor. The Spanish, or whomever, I think it's mostly Spanish, forced the natives of the Caribbean to intermarry with blacks, which I see as evil, and such that some of the native tribes there have no remaining pure members. And the Taino allegedly greeted the Spanish and Christopher Columbus with hospitality, perfectly willing to help them. And Columbus put down his noose and his cross. Here I'm kind of sympathetic to the natives, and I never felt comfortable with Columbus Day anyway. I mean, what the hell was he discovering? There were people already there. I always thought it was weird. But it's history, and I'm not gonna feel guilty about it either. I don't want to be penalized for this. But
Sorry, go ahead. No, you go.
But to me, it's the Africans are the big problem. The African admixture that makes for the big problem. And then you got some places like Jamaica, which are really black.
Well, Jamaica was natively black, is that right?
No, not natively, no.
Really? Was it?
It all would have been Taino Indian, the Carib or the Caribs.
I did not know that.
Caribbean Indian, yeah. The blacks.
There's still loads I don't know about, like former colonies and various parts of the world and ethnic groups. But I think it's sort of hidden as well, isn't it? Like population. I even survived the giant was talking about this with sort of European groups, like sort of population displacement. And
replacement. There was a Polish group in Haiti. They're blended away though. I think you can see a little bit of their traits in some of them. And of course, the French that were there got wiped out.
Oh, that's so interesting. Depressing as well.
Yeah,
it's also like what from kind of like an ethno-nationalist point of view, like which route do you go down? You know, that's because it's like you just go with like the population who's there. Is that correct, or I don't know.
Well, I don't know what do you mean?
Well, I'd say, I mean, like if you was within the DNA Nations project, I mean, I guess you would have to say it's from like an ethno-nationalist point of view, it's really the group who's left there. I guess. I mean, especially what I'm saying is, if historically.
I can answer the issue of who gets what parcel of land is especially when it comes to non-Europeans is way down the line in concerns. That's way after the fact. First, we have to organize our people in the virtual realm. If we're talking about concern for turf. Our first concern, of course, has to be for our European hearth homeland.
Oh, of course, yeah, of course. I mean, for instance, because I think a lot of people, some like the traditional Britain group, for instance, they would probably be in favour of repatriating a number of our people of Jamaican descent to Jamaica.
Well. Maybe that's that would be repatriating them to a place where they're not native either. But I don't want to talk that way too much on YouTube. But
no, I hear you. Yeah.
Because this is one of the advantages that I have. Like when Claire Cause tried to trap me into that, saying that I wanted to deport people. This is the good thing about the DNA Nations concept is that we are not doing that. At least, well, all we're doing is trying to organize our people, and obviously, we're not going to include people who are not us in this attempt to curate, so to speak, and protect our cons. Zetas says it was a class thing, not a race thing. So much has been rewritten in the last century. I think, is she talking about the Haitian Revolution? Zeta, if you won't join us in this discussion, you're not a man.
Yeah, you should come on, have a chat. I don't mind taking a back seat or whatever. Pop on.
Well, you don't have to take a back seat. Zeta is man up. I'm teasing her. That's it.
Oh no, I know. Yeah.
She is, she circulates among all of the WN circles.
Oh, I saw. I thought it was a bloke. It's a lady. So.
Yeah, and she knows. She's well apprised of the kosher question. Although. She's sort of like I don't know totally where she's coming from. She was promoting what's his name, the Christian guy, the Canadian Christian guy, Famster. What's his name?
I'm not sure.
So that's not good because he's not only a Christian but he's a snob.
Oh, McKennis was promoting that as well. Christian Europe and this type of thing.
And so she might not like me because I'm not a Christian. And but then again, I don't think that Semiagog is a Christian. She endorses him too. Who I think he's got a ridiculous worldview. He is against anthropocentrism or something like that. what's supposed to be our central worldview? Well, vegetables? Ridiculous.
He was talking about. I'm not, to be honest, I'm not really sure if I understood him about the arbitrary language of nature. Language, sorry.
Yeah, that's exactly it. He's an expression of a right-wing reaction to what Bateson called the wish to return to the innocence of mood signs. Now, mood signs are what animals send, like scents and signals like that, and that language is somehow arbitrary. It's not necessarily wrong what he says about written language being before spoken language, but it's like it's a reaction in the sense that he's trying. It's as if he's as I've been saying in so many ways, a reaction to kosher rhetoric and the sort of shenanigans in the world of praxis, that you try to get some sort of theory and warrant that can't be fucked with. And that's what he's going for. That's what guest worker was going for. That's what kind of Bowery would be hoped for. And the thing is, you can always, in some sense, fuck with our boundaries. There's not a pure way, a pure, totally non-arbitrary way to divide it. This is why Semyagog is so determined to say, "Oh, there's nothing arbitrary about." Well, there is something slightly arbitrary about it. What you can say is that the distinctions and boundaries are warranted enough that people would be and are absurd to say that this is not a valid distinction. That's why the pragmatist Dewey, for example, talks in terms of the end game being warranted assertability and operational verifiability. And that's good enough, but it's not something that can't be contested and will be by the disingenuous. You'll hear arguments, most of them very stupid, about how you just made that up. It's a mere social construct. Well, it's not, and but the idea that the hope is that it would be so automatic that we wouldn't even have to argue in our defense, and that's not going to happen. So Semyagog is basically showing his lack of being up to date philosophically.
Interesting. Yeah, he was on Millennial. I did listen to it, but I'm not really sure if I got it really.
Of course he was. I mean, all the right wingers are going to be on Millennial Yule. That's how he's going to. That's his avenue to fame. He'll never overcome his past as a. I shouldn't be so hard on him, but I will.
I mean, yeah, McKennis was promoting right-wingerism, if you like. He was saying about initially he was in the Richard Spencer game, and we know about Richard Spencer, and then he started talking about race and all the rest of it, and then that was when they never talked again. But yeah,
they all are.
When I was listening to him, I was just thinking like all these little red herrings and all these little red capes, as you would say. It was like you made a fucking like checklists and check them off one by one.
that's why. I mean, I'm patting myself on the back for this platform because it holds up and makes consistent sense. You'll all hear them, criticizing the left, and this is what the left does, and this is what we as
Oh, you
right
guys
need to do.
follow
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you've heard this podcast called New Right by this guy Matthew Pegas, who started talking with Robert Stark and
that. Was Jonathan Bowden on there and Spencer at one point, the new right? Possibly. Well, carry
no,
on. Okay,
I
well,
don't
carry on.
think, but you know who was Matt Forney.
Oh, yeah, that guy.
New Right as in WRIT, like it's a writer's thing.
Oh,
And,
sorry, yeah.
yeah, and well, I wouldn't expect that you would.
Sorry, I think Vanguard Network or something like that. Whatever it was. Yeah.
Um, Vanguard. That's something else. That's
This is a while ago, and I was getting into this stuff. Might
no.
be.
Vanguard's got some good information. That's what's his name?
I think it was Spencer's podcast, and he had Jonathan Bowden on, which is I wasn't interested in Spencer,
Yeah, definitely.
but I was interested in Bowden at the
Spencer
time.
talked a lot with John Bowden.
Yeah, at least twice or three times.
He was talking to him right until the time he died. Yeah.
See, now those I would, I know critiques of Bowden, but those I would listen to just because I think just these Bowden's are so interesting and brilliant, and he's quite funny in his own way.
Yeah, it's true. But as I said, in revisiting him, and my own view hadn't crystallized at the time because I was at the Voice of Reason Network at the same time that Richard Spencer would have been moving through there, and of course, Jonathan Bowden was a friend of the people there because I think that the whole network was paid for by Regnery probably. So he was, he's the publisher who's publishing all these people, probably Bowden, and I wouldn't have been attuned to the fact, which I observed the very last time I listened to Bowden, that he was an earlier adopter of a characterology of the left as the problem, more articulate, and it's not. When you do it the way Bowden did, it was much more intelligent because what he was doing was he was describing, up to including the psychology of those who would be true believers in Marxism and this stuff, the abuses of postmodern ideas like hermeneutics and so on. So what he was doing was not inaccurate exactly. He was describing how those, what I would now say, red capes were, how they were, and what the kind of more factual and truthful stance, call it right wing, well, I would be in response, and because he's more intelligent than than most, it would be good. I've never heard a better description of the kind of Marxist communist mindset than his, and criticism of it.
Well, he was brilliant because he was doing what you were saying, but also he would use real world examples at the current time, which is brilliant because it was much more relatable to people. It wasn't just like it wasn't sound like Mao in his period or Stalin or whatever. It was like people today, like politicians in Britain today, like mouthing these things or working on these ideas. He was brilliant. Yeah, he was. I miss him in a way. He was very Nietzsche.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry that he died so young.
He was very Nietzsche. A lot of some people don't really like that the
Well, yeah, I
findings.
mean, then again, even though he was brilliant, maybe that would have been a problem because really, people are better off with my platform. And the thing is that when you take these observations of uh, the left being a leftist concepts being abused and distorted, and feedback from and look upon the rightist truth inquiries and appreciation of uh, adherence to nature and so on. Uh, these things, as I say, should not function as opposites as this Gottfried characterology of the left as the enemy would have it, but rather uh, these right wing sort of truth inquiries should function as feedback to the calibration of our uh, group organization and advocacy, which is, at the depth grammar of these uh, of leftism, which could and should function in our service, in our ethno-national service, which this campaign, since 2008 in particular, doesn't want us to do. But they want us to say, and maybe Bowden was even guilty of this, is that the left can't possibly deal with nature and truth and facts when, well, why the hell not? That is to say, the left, as in our organization, our unionization, our advocacy, can indeed start with the relative interests of our groups and make necessary use. It has to, of the feedback of what is the truth, what are the facts, what does nature say, so to speak. So the fact that they've divided, that they've pitted us against these leftist organizing concepts, and saying that this can't correspond with truth, has us getting into this objectivist purity spiral, which is at odds with our social organization and so on. As already.
I know Bowden. I've read a couple of his books. I mostly know him from his brilliant speeches. It's just such a shame he didn't chat, because I genuinely think he would possibly, if not be on board, he would certainly be interested in talking with you in a proper way, not as a bad actor. I don't know. Yeah,
that's quite flattering. I heard that his speeches are better than his writing. I don't know if that's true.
No, that is, his writing is, particularly later on. He had a bit of a mental breakdown, poor fellow, and his writing is a little bit haphazard, although some of it's really quite brilliant. But yeah, no, his speeches are. He was a brilliant orator, and his speeches were his raison d'etre, if you like. But there was a quote he made in a speech. I forget exactly what it was. I wish I could remember it verbatim. It was something like, he was talking about how his vision was that the left and the right would blend into something and create new vistas. It was kind of slightly cryptic and almost mystical in his typical way. But yeah, I don't, because he's definitely a proponent of the right and what have you, and the new right in France as well.
Can you hold your thought? I have to address something that Zed is talking about. Sorry.
Go ahead.
Haha, Tyler Hamilton, you are correct. I am not a respecter of trends, just good thinking. Well, yeah, Tyler Hamilton is he's very intelligent. There's no doubt about it, and you learn a lot from listening to him, even if he is a Christian and a proselytizer of that faith. So I understand you, but I can't promote this guy, particularly because he's been he was quite dismissive of me, and I found it ridiculous. Yeah, but no, I hear you, Zetas. I maybe it's hypocritical of me, but I would still tune in to podcasts of his, even though I don't agree with him, because he's very intelligent and very knowledgeable. And then says, by the way, I'm a lay Buddhist monk and honorary yogi. You think that you know me? I don't know. I just said that I don't know you. I thought that you might be a Christian because you were endorsing Tyler Hamilton, and he's very committed Christian. I wish that you would join us and let us become more familiar. You talked to me once. I don't know why you won't talk again. I'm so maybe Zetas will come on, and maybe she won't. But put the link one more time. Maybe we can use her. Zetas, man up. Yeah. So you're talking about what your appreciation of Jonathan Bowden.
I was wrong about that quote. It was not about the lesson. There was that quote, I think, but the quote I made was actually a slight mistake. He was talking about the force for light and the force for darkness to be melded together to create a new vista based on identity. Yeah, it was a fascinating quote. Sorry, carry on.
Yeah, well, but that's this kind of like wish to transcend right and left is a trick, as I see it, to get us to not only try to move foolishly past the whole idea of organizing and delimiting our people and our boundaries, but also to introduce elements which will continually reify, that is to make rigid certain ideas and provide vulnerabilities to entryism. That is, if we have a solid concept of the first order, is this leftist idea of unionization, we're excluding the means to infiltrate, subvert elements which purport to be above our group or below it in nature, and therefore beyond accountability, therefore rigid and easily and potentially manipulated by our enemies or by rogues, and destabilizing, because one who observes the right will observe that it's inherently unstable. It doesn't work to sustain our groups, and
which ironically is what a lot of right wingers want, actually, deep down.
Well, in a way, yeah. I mean, if
I should say right-wing ethno-nationalists, to be precise. But
if you are in America, for example, about the last thing in the world you would want to do is to be social with the de facto with the demographics that you're thrown in with. Yeah, you want to be, you're latching on to whatever is going to extricate you from that kind of enmeshment. Absolutely, that's where Bowery is coming from. That's why someone like him is going to be so averse to anything social. He's going to see as like trying to get him caught up with all kinds of people that he doesn't want to be caught up with. He almost can't hear me when I say, no, you don't understand. I don't want you. I want you to be social with your people, not with
It
the people that
just
you're thrown in there with.
I do agree with that. I mean, bear in mind this is a bloke who was proposed to nuke the sort of major cities of the West, or at least the US. I mean, I'm not, this is obviously much far higher IQ than myself, whatever. But you have to kind of mark these criterions for some people. I think if
Well, that's how desperate. That's how desperate the situation
is
in America can be. It's so horrible. It's so oppressive.
that kind of pastoral kind of subsistence, or just beyond sort of subsistence farming, or beyond level of living like that. What Barry talks about that, I mean, now I would agree that it's probably a more natural, probably healthier way of living. Not all of our people can do that. Of course, you need urban areas and semi-urban areas and whatever, but I can see a lot of people being attracted to that kind of vision of life. Sorry, Karen.
No, that's fine. That's fine, and it's not mutually exclusive. We we need that and can sponsor that, but I think that I mean if sustainability for one thing is to be a concern, then you don't necessarily want um, a sprawl of yeoman farms. That's probably not going to be ecological either. It's probably better to have some cities concentrating people in certain areas, and so to free up enough open spaces. And furthermore, it takes a lot of skill to do uh, yeoman farming the way that Valerie talks about. I mean, when I used to talk to him, I said, "Oh yeah, Valerie, what do you think that I should do with this land of mine?" And like, "Oh well, you're just put up a greenhouse and do this, that, and other thing, and engineering gadgetry to keep it." It's like stuff is so far over my head. Farming, that's not easy.
No, that's a skill set, sure. I should
Concentrating.
say,
Oh,
sorry.
no, concentrating populations so that they don't uh, encroach upon all wild spaces and nature. You need open spaces.
Oh, of
That's
course, yeah. I mean, I think not that it would be just the choice between the two, but I think people would, in a way, would rather have sort of farmland and sort of some type of nature rather than just kind of like say Los Angeles or Greater Manchester or London, where it's just like an urban sprawl, you know.
Well, some would, but then again, on the other hand, if those cities were white, you really might not mind them.
Uh, um, well, less, but I would here. I mean, in the States, it's a bit different because it's so large, but here we are a very small island, and it's tragic to see Britain become essentially a big housing estate.
Yeah.
Or that's
Oh,
potentially.
absolutely. I'm told that it's not like the United States. It's hard to even go anywhere in England without you know bumping into other people. You go for a walk in nature, and you're not going to be alone for long in most places. That's what
There's
I hear. I don't know.
yeah, parts of Scotland, parts of the Yorkshire Dales, maybe couple other places, but yeah, basically, yeah. I mean, I don't mind. I don't mind walking into people on a hike or whatever. Which the hiking, if anyone's listening, is a very wonderful, cheap hobby. You really only need a couple of waterproofs, a canteen, proper boots. You can buy a walking stick, although you can use a bit of ash
No,
or
isn't that the
or something
best
wood.
form of exercise? Walking, because you're not stressing yourself so much that you can't think and you can't talk to somebody, and you're or that you can't enjoy the nature around you, and yet you're getting your cardio working and your
I think
exercise. It's probably
it's
the
the
perfect
most
exercise.
spiritual type of exercise. To be scientific, I think swimming is the best exercise because it
Oh, well,
alleviates
just physically, but I'm talking
pressure
about
on the joints. Yeah.
on the whole. in the whole picture, for mind,
Yes.
mind and body.
Yeah.
I think that
And it's
hiking
so
could be
cheap.
even better.
It's so
And,
cheap. Yeah.
and it's cheap, and you might even get somewhere. But the thing is that England is not like Poland and these Central European countries that are also so flat. You have beautiful topography there, and you have these great old oak trees and ancient churches and whatnot dotting the way. So, and those beautiful stone walls and everything.
Yeah.
So
It's not like the Niagara Falls, which whilst is magnificent, it is almost overbearing and overwhelming. Whereas, say, like the rolling hills of England, which is what Shakespeare really adored, I think. Although Shakespeare's, although intellectuals will revere Shakespeare, when you, at the heart of it, it's really being very funny. It's the countryside, drinking too much, and so on. But yeah, no, there's an understated beauty to England and a sort of a serenity to it, which is rare in this world. You won't find it in many other parts, I don't think.
it's beautiful for sure. Zeta says, "Are we going to the universe?" I think that we have to maintain that trajectory because the Earth is not going to last forever. We have to get to outer space if we're going to have a chance to survive indefinitely. So I'm not anti outer space or anything like that. Although I must say, from what I can see, there's nothing all that appealing to living on a icy rock of a sphere in outer space as opposed to the beautiful topography that Mirth Baron was just talking about. I'd much prefer it to be here as long as possible. Right? Am I wrong?
I've mixed views about that. It's quite complicated, that topic. I don't know. I don't think it's going to be for the common man if it's a real thing that we can get people to say Mars or whatever. Um, because I think, or it's going to be very niche. Like it will be just like the top
Only
biologists,
Elon Musk.
scientists. Yeah, and your top scientists and so on.
He already kind of looks like an alien, doesn't he? He's a bit weird looking.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah,
Silliness.
yeah. There's a lot to say. I feel like
Zed is
I've
give us a serious pill.
talk another
Come on,
time.
set us straight. Zed us. These silly men here. Don't let us.
Zealous,
Don't dare let us trivialize you.
should come on and have a chat. You know.
She appreciated, and correctly so, the podcast that Frame Games used to do. This Jewish guy was really he was. If I was Jewish, I would hate Frame Games because he was. I never heard anybody spill the beans on what they were up to worse than him.
I've heard that name banded around a few times. Yeah.
Frame Games, yeah, and he did some really good interviews with Gary Yippee, who would be ZS's best friend up there in Eastern Canada.
Oh, the French Canadian guy.
Yeah, I'm joking when calling him her best friend. I don't entirely care for him, although he's done some good things. In other ways, he bothers. Well, he bothers me for the typical thing that I'm going to say because it's typically true. He falls right into the frame of identify as right wing and the left is the enemy. No more culpable of falling into that marketing campaign than JFK.
Have you listened to the Ayatollah yet? You know, I mentioned that quite a few times.
Oh, not yet. You mentioned
Yeah,
him once.
he's brilliant in his own way, but one just on a non-political aspect, I love a lot of their stream. His stream is just him doing impressions of various political figures, and one of them
Ayatollah?
is the Ayatollah. Yeah, I'll give his details in the private chat. Um,
Okay.
and a lot of his stream is just him doing impressions of various people, sort of Alan Partridge, Tyson Fury. He does one of J. Edgar Rippey. It's just very
He
funny.
does. He does James Griffey. Not kidding.
Yeah, and I'm not going to read that. I can't read. I'm crap at impressions, but yeah, it's just very. It's just a very. Um,
Cool.
it's listenable, you know, even if you don't agree with all the politics or whatever.
Good impressionists are a good thing. Funny. What's it? Frame game days. Ah! I'm going through this thing again. I had a thought and it went away. It's not. It's not your. I'm not blaming you. It's not your fault. Oh yeah. So do you think that Snork and poor Norden will speak with us again? Well, or
As far as I know, yeah, it's just the time difference. It's the dastardly time difference standing in the way. When I had some stuff going on the other Sunday, but I did join late.
I hope
Yeah, I
so.
don't see why not.
So are you going to be available on what is it on Sunday?
This Sunday, yeah, I can be. I'm working Saturday, but I can be available Sunday. Yeah.
Okay, so I won't shoot for Saturday. I'll shoot for Sunday. I'll try to get Perk to come on this time. It would be really good if he can because he's very smart and he's very apprised of all these things. He's he's very keen on the kosher question, and also he understands what I'm saying. He's not getting trapped in the box. And Snork, well, as you saw, Snork has already had some back and forth with Per, so it would be really good if we could get that kind of connection operating between you guys.
Absolutely. I mean, it's not even. I'm not sure if it's even a critique, but I'll just raise it. So I think it should be raised, perhaps. But I know some people would dislike Snork because he's sort of moved to Japan and had is Happer the right term? Happer children.
Yeah.
I mean, that would be an issue with people, and I can understand that to a degree. To be fair, but yeah.
Well, I can understand that to a degree, but the reason why I'm eager to buck that a bit is because precisely because its central mission to this platform to protect our kinds, including our purer kinds. So if we have help from some marginals, that's not a bad thing. And sometimes a marginal like that can have almost a better perspective as to the problems. But yeah, it's. I know that Zedez is offended by white guys with yellow fever. I understand. I do understand that.
I would just say, I just wonder. I'm not critiquing him really. I'm not. If you listen, I'm not having a go at you. I'm just saying. I just wonder, had he become more aware earlier on, he may have chosen a different partner. I don't know.
Yeah, and he goes into on Millennial Yule. He went into a long discussion about the complications of it, and he was telling me that he had both he and his wife saw it as a problem even beforehand. They talked about it a lot, and yes, I mean. Absolutely, it would be a problem for some. Matter of fact, Metzger One of the reasons why he rejected Alex Linder's friend Rounder, Fraser Glenn Miller, was because he had a half Vietnamese daughter, who he even disowned, and it still wasn't good enough. And it's like, this guy's a traitor. He has a child with a Vietnamese woman.
Why is he disown?
I guess he felt the same thing. This was he said he did it before he was aware of, before he had racial consciousness, and then when he became aware, he didn't feel good about having a half Asian daughter anymore. I think that's extreme.
So sad, isn't it? Yeah.
It is sad, but yeah. Well, he's the one who walked in and shot 3 people that he thought were Jewish who weren't even. So I have to laugh at these right wingers. They're so stupid. Well, in some ways, Fraser Glenn Miller was quite clever too. He's one of the guys who got money from the order from their bank robberies. A bunch of guys got $250,000. I think Metzger got $250,000. Fraser Glenn Miller got $250,000. Probably David Duke.
I didn't know about this.
Yeah, well, they robbed a Brinks truck. Bob Matthews, David Lane, Bruce Pierce, who's some of the other members, Richard Scutari, and Richard Kemp. I think there's at least these 5 guys who were holding up banks, and their big heist was a Brinks truck in Ukiah, California. Matter of fact, that's how they got caught in the end, because they dropped a gun and it was traced to, I think, registered to Bob Matthews. So anyway, where was I? Oh yeah, so they got $1 million or something, that they were giving out $250,000 a piece to people they thought were William Luther Pierce got $250,000, I'm sure too. Yeah, he would have been one of the ones. But Fraser Glenn Miller got $250,000. And I think Metzger got $250,000. But Metzger, that's part of the reason, I think, why he always remained so loyal to the order. Bob Matthews and David Lane being the 14 words guy.
I was reading about this. This is very interesting. And in cash as well. I'm very traditional, Daniel. I like cash. I don't like payments.
Me too. I never pay with my debit card. I always pay in cash. So Fraser Glenn Miller, he was, but he could be a good organizer. He wrote a couple books. I forget the name.
I don't think Fraser Glenn Miller.
Also go around. He wound up being friends. Alex Linder did not, embraced him anyway and defended him. Of course, Alex Linder is very, super radical one. But I think that you would probably enjoy listening to Fraser Glenn Miller. There's a lot of good things to say about these issues. Listen to his interview by Howard Stern. Howard Stern interviewed Fraser
that
Glenn.
guy.
Yeah, but it's brutally candid. Fraser Glenn Miller was also interviewed by.
I'll see if that's on YouTube. It's already been destroyed.
No, I think it should be there. If it's not on YouTube, it'll be easy to find on BitChute or Odyssey. He also talked to David Pachman, the Jewish guy, and it's brutal. He's Alex Linder has nothing on him when it comes to that question. Believe me. Howard Stern asked him, "Who's worse, blacks or Jews?" And he goes, Jews are 10,000 times worse. So he's, a true committed right winger. Metzger didn't like him. Metzger considered him a traitor. Not on, his having a half Vietnamese kid from the Vietnam War was only half, or only a small part of the problem. The big thing is that he was called upon to testify against the order in their in the trial in which they were charged with sedition, with planning to overthrow the U.S. government. And Alex Lynn defended him. Said he didn't. His testimony didn't really do any damage against the order, but Metzger was so loyal to Bob Matthews that he would never forgive Glenn Miller for that. And also, Metzger didn't like David Duke, and David Duke was always a favorite of Glenn Miller. Glenn Miller preferred, kind of was closer to that perspective.
This is all cool stuff. I didn't know about any of this. This is all interesting. Wasn't there some jazz musician or something called Glenn Miller or something similar?
Yeah, it's the same name, but it's a different Glenn Miller.
I think that's what run. Yeah, fair enough.
Glenn Miller did that good song, "Moonlight Serenade."
Yeah, that was it. Yeah.
The GIs used to dance to on the ships during World War II.
Yeah, I like a lot of that music. I'd rather they play that than hip hop and rap.
Any day. Tell me about it. Any day.
That's actually a little like minor red pill I have in the real world. But it was like they say so I say I loathe rap and hip hop, and they're like, oh, you just don't.
I hate this. It's so alien, and it's like the alien war drums. It's horrible.
It is, yeah.
It creates such a harrowing atmosphere to hear it. Ooh, it's awful.
Yeah. But you just don't like music. Black people say, well, not necessarily. I quite like a lot of old jazz.
Of course, a lot of it's amazing, but not that.
But I mentioned jazz, whatever.
Zed, come on the show, will you? What's the matter with you, Killjoy? I won't put Zed, if you come on the show, I won't put up any semi-naked pictures on my Twitter for a week. She really got on me for that. She still hasn't come back onto my as a Twitter follower because I put up a picture of this cute girl in her underwear. She said that I wanted to fuck her. I don't know. I want to know whether I want to fuck her. I don't even know her. Maybe she's a jerk. She just looked good. And now I'm sounding like my sister. It's a valid critique. I did not start my Twitter thread, with the idea that it was for a general audience. I thought it was appealing to the guy, the guys who are youthful fighters. This, the other side of the 14 words is because the beauty of the white Aryan woman must not perish from the face of the earth. But you're not necessarily wrong either. I mean, defending a full population, which includes, plenty of women who are never were in this kind of shape and or are no longer because they're older, and I don't really want to make them feel bad, and nor do I want to make bad women who feel great about themselves when they can be very shitty people. So I mean, it's not, and it's I could see how that could fuck with the heads of young girls. One of the things that I have been doing in correction of that, I've been tweeting images of flat-chested women with the hashtag "Say No to Breast Implants," because I really, I don't mind flat. I had a flat-chested girlfriend, and it wasn't a problem at all. It was for erotic, and I just can't stand the idea of breast implants, and I think it's terrible that young girls will disfigure themselves just because there's a few stupid guys, and I don't even know that many, who just like feel like they have to have giant boobs. I don't know that many guys who have this requirement. When do you ever see a beautiful flat-chested woman who's alone? You don't. You know,
Yeah, don't define what
Keira Knightley's
made.
not going to have a boyfriend because she's flat-chested. Well, of course not.
Don't deform what the gods made in flesh. Yeah.
I don't like nose jobs either. So, yeah.
Just quickly, if you YouTube Fraser Glenn Miller, it's just nothing but clips from the litigation. It's like you just doodle at the moment, Amber Heard or Johnny Depp. It's just pure litigation clips. That's what it is.
Wow.
But I'll track down.
There'll be if you go to VNN Alex Linder's site, I think there's a whole category of him because he was a regular there. Also, there's going to be, like I said, you will find there's a longer and a shorter Howard Stern's, but it's worth while seeing the longer one, and the David Pakman interview is good too. But it makes it all the more surprising when you hear how, in a way, rational he is. It makes it all the more surprising that he did this stupid thing, which was he went to some community center where they were doing they were putting on what was the Gregory Peck thing, the anti-racist kind of movie. It was some movie where a black is falsely accused of raping a woman. And Atticus
to kill a mockingbird.
Yeah, exactly. They're performing the play To Kill a Mockingbird, and Fraser Glenn Miller goes over with the gun. He's going to shoot up people. It was in the Jewish community center, and he shoots the first 3 people that he sees in the parking lot. Turns out none of them are Jewish. One of them kind of looks Jewish. It was an Italian woman, looked a bit Jewish, but she wasn't Jewish. And then it was a kid that he killed and his grandfather.
Gosh.
This is Metzger was even saying, it's like, this is the right wing.
Yeah.
When I brought Metzger on to talk to GW, this is the right wing. Same with that guy in Buffalo. It's like, he shoots an 84-year-old black woman like that. A lot of good that's going to do, right?
Yeah, I mean, I but we're on the regime's media. We don't have free speech, but yeah, it's.
I don't blame you for laughing. It's just so
no, I shouldn't. I'm laughing. I'm not laughing.
I know you're laughing because it's so ridiculous.
Absurdity of it. I just wish we had free speech that I could really, to you and the audience, go in detail on that. But anyway, but that's too much. Killing a child. I mean, it's like, come on. And the horror. I mean, even Himmler was concerned about this, about the SS divisions who were liquidating.
He might have been concerned about it, but in the end, he hardened up. He said, "We can't have a generation of Avengers coming about."
Well, yeah, but he
don't let him off the hook too easy.
No, I'm not. I'm just saying it's like even he was like aware of like the psychological effects that this would have on even like you more kind of hardcore people.
Yeah, well, in the sense, yes, and also how it would. You're right. I see the point that you're making. It would reverberate against enthusiasm for our cause and loyalty when you got people who are killing the children of others. Yeah. I see your point. Yeah,
because my understanding is that a lot of kind of other Germans, the sort of even other SS people were like, we didn't sign up for that. We're not on board with that. Anyway.
Yeah. Anyway, so it looks like Zedez is not going to come on. Zedez, feel free to join us another time. Hopefully on Friday. Hopefully on Friday, or excuse me, on Sunday. Per and Snorkel will join us, and if that Thor guy wants to join us too, he can. but Ben said, as if you're welcome to join us too. Um, I hope that I fleshed out this important Heideggerian. I want to stress that these Heideggerian ideas of, because there are ideas, not kosher ideas, of hermeneutics and liberation from mere facticity, because it's important not to get. That's how we get beyond the arbitrary, the thrownness into the arbitrary empirical world that was also Kant's concern, by the way. Though Kant didn't quite manage it the way that the hermeneuticists would. He didn't succeed. It was still Cartesian. But Heidegger was following with Dilthey and other forebears, no doubt, was showing this way, the way to this important postmodern concept, which has been abused and red-caped by our enemies, but it's ours, and I hope that I'm helping to understand that it is ours and how it's supposed to be used in order to govern our in order to manage our homeostasis. So yeah, that's. I hope it's okay to wrap up unless there's anything else you want to say for now, Mirth, or there was adjourned till Sunday.
No, just lovely people, lovely nation. Look at a lot of the great art we've made. This little, my avatar is William Boudarou, if I'm pronouncing his name correctly.
Oh, cool.
No,
yeah, you've sent me a couple really good paintings, by the way. I forgot to comment on them.
No worries. Yeah, I normally do that in emails. I'll send a little image.
That's a good touch. Yeah, and so hermeneutics will and liberation from mere facticity will importantly take us into coherence, both for you individuals out there, for your autobiography, and for our group. And it's and it will also take us to the transcendent realm of of our if you want to call it spirituality or religious realm, transcendent of the moment and episode, and take us into the pattern of our forebears and extending into the legacy for our children and Zedez's children and grandchildren. So it's crucially important, and it's our concept, and shouldn't be taken for us and misrepresented as not ours. Mirth, I want to thank you again. It's always a pleasure. I called attention to the brilliant observations that you made, about when I said, for example, about World War I, that well, maybe there is a eugenic aspect about for the guys who don't go to war, they're not getting snookered in. There's a wisdom about that, and you quickly, just instantaneously, noted the fact that there was conscription and heavy-duty propaganda stigmatizing people who would avoid the draft and conscription. That was brilliant. Also, brilliant was what you said about how Heidegger was like said about his disillusionment with World War One. Was probably heavily influential in his criticism of technology and modernity, and his invoking the postmodern turn. It's not only hermeneutics. I want to reemphasize, because I tend to not emphasize this. It's also emergentism that he's working with. But either way, it's a postmodern, anti-Cartesian term, and Cartesianism being like sort of the synchronon of the Cartesian, of the modern starting point. John Locke at the other extreme, the empirical end of this divide. And, okay, so enough said. And so What time should we shoot for on Sunday?
I can, I think, do any time really. I should be free.
Okay, so I'll send you an email and we'll feel it out with Per and Snork and kind of work it out so in combination of what's best for everyone.
Just very quickly, Amanda was there. Was it Amanda? Was that the right her name?
She was what?
Amanda. Yeah, no, she was very fun. She was very enjoyable. I
I agree.
really enjoyed listening to her. She should have her on again, I think.
She's welcome anytime. She's a lovely woman. I feel bad because I'm gonna criticize Islam when the issue comes up, and she is a Muslim. She woman. She lives in Lebanon now. She's yeah, but I agree. She's very intelligent and she's very level-headed. She even said that she doesn't mind. She doesn't take it personally in hearing criticisms of Islam, but she understands. Well, I think that her major overlapping concern with this perspective is that we are critical of the YKW, and she living in Lebanon is acutely concerned with that, with Israel's shenanigans.
Oh yeah.
But also she's quite sympathetic with what it's like to live with the homies, having lived in Greater Detroit. So she knows what that's about too, and also she has sympathy for what's happening to Europe, on the basis of those two issues. So yeah, she's very good. I would talk to her, whereas I'm not really interested in talking to this Muslim lady that Claire sent yesterday. But Amanda definitely, she's a good one, really. She's 1/4 Jewish, though. You should know she's 1/4 Jewish, 1/4. I think she's 1/4 French, and what else? Maybe 1/4 Irish. I know that she's 1/4 Jewish and 1/4.
Bit of a blend, yeah.
Yeah, French, but she's not identifying as Jewish, and she's actually quite miffed. she's a downright anti-Semitic, actually.
She got the Neanderthal gene as well. That red hair.
Oh no, you're talking about now. You're talking about Angela.
Hey, excuse me, Angela. Sorry, I think yes.
Yeah, Amanda is the other. Amanda's another woman. And Angela. That's probably dyed right hair, but anyway, yeah. The pot smoker. Yeah, she was all right.
That was her. Sorry, yeah. I'll have to check out Amanda. Sorry, yeah. Forgive me. It's Angela I was talking about. Yeah.
I think that I still have a stream up talking with Amanda, and not a long one. She was disappointed that I took down a while back. I don't know why I took it down. It's stupid that it was stupid that I didn't save some of these streams because there were problematic segments and I didn't want to be bothered editing them. Took the whole thing down and didn't save it. Shouldn't have done that, but I think that I did that with one of Amanda's. Angela, yeah, I doubt very much that Angela's going to be on board with the ethnic genetic interest thing, but she'll talk to us, so she's not like a big enemy either, but she's mainly into apparently mainly into talking about day-to-day issues, along with her interest in the kinds of marijuana that she likes, which is fine.
Cannabinoid healing and what have you.
I don't mind her talking about that, but it's not like my forte either. Yeah, no, I agree. She said some things that were really funny. I remember when I told her that there's this law passed by the Jewish district attorney there. What's his name? He's the son of a terrorist, a left-wing terrorist. Oh, it begins with a CH. What the hell was his name? In San Francisco, the district attorney. Come on. Anyway, there was this famous radical terrorist who put a bomb in the Capitol and went to jail for 14 years and was pardoned by Bill Clinton. And she has this son who's become a district attorney in San Francisco. That's how screwed up America is. And he passed this. He changed the laws so that in the Bay Area, if people, as in, well, you know who, blacks, of course, go in and steal from a store less than $1,000 worth of material, that they can't be prosecuted.
Amazing, yeah.
It is amazing, and and so a lot of like pharmacies and such have had to shut down because they're getting just pilfered. But Angela said, "Oh, that wouldn't apply to me. The helicopters would be above the spotlights." No, this was a really funny remark. I'd be the only one that they arrest.
I just quickly, I started working for a place. They're not a chain, but they had another store, and a bloke came up full of a shopping cart full, and he said, "There's this lovely little dainty English girl behind the till," and he said to her, "What the fuck are you going to do about it?" On the one hand, it's like, obviously she should have just let him go. If it was me, because I'm not a hard guy, but I'm 6'5". I don't know if he would have tried that.
You're 6'5"?
Yeah,
dude, you're massive.
Yeah, I'm too tall, really, like 6'2", 6'3", 6'1" is maybe like the correct height. But it's not like the money that bothers me. Whatever it was, let's say it was 100 quid. It's the principle that this bloke just rock up to a local store, not a chain, not like a megacorp, but rock up to a store, fill a shopping cart, and just walk out and say that.
Wow.
I don't know.
And you're right that does make a qualitative difference too. That it's mom and pop, not a not a corporation. Oh man!
If I think he's a psychopath,
before I forget, the name of that district attorney, I think, was Chesa Bodine, and his mother was there was an article about his mother written by Andrew Joyce over at Occidental Observer. Yeah. Oh yeah. Just the hyper assertiveness is appalling.
But the laws in this country, I don't know about the States, they're very much in favour of the thief. It's like it's occupation government.
Disgusting.
And if you want to wrap it up, Daniel,
So I'll see you on Sunday, and thanks for talking again.
Pleasure as always.
Okay, we'll talk to you soon. Bye for now.